Rain fell gently on the dense forest, washing over broken trees and thick mud. A loud crack had shaken the sky minutes earlier. Something had crashed. Hidden in the darkness, deep between the trees, smoke rose slowly from the twisted metal of a small alien dropship. Inside, Commander Zarak opened his eyes. He was not used to pain. His kind, the Vorelians, had near-perfect bodies, trained and modified for war. But now, one side of his chest burned. His black armor was damaged, the shoulder plating half melted from re-entry. He pushed himself up, coughing. Around him, sparks flew from broken control panels. His ship had failed. No signals, no tracking, no command. He was alone. He stepped outside into the wet, silent forest. His scanner blinked red. No communication, no orbiting fleet. Earth. This was the human homeworld. The backwater planet. Unimportant. Weak. The Galactic Council had declared it low threat. His mission was simple: land, observe, and report. Zarak scanned the area. No life signs nearby. But a strange hum came from the west. He moved carefully, his steps silent. After 10 minutes, he found something unexpected. Buried behind vines and moss, there was an old military gate. Faded letters spelled out something in the human language. Camp Resolute. The fence was broken. No guards. No power. He stepped inside. The base was large, but ruined. Empty tents flapped in the wind. Rusted weapons lay on the ground. It looked abandoned for years, but something felt wrong. There was no dust on the control panels. No animal nests. The mess hall still had sealed food packs. Fresh. Zarak frowned. He wasn't a fool. This wasn't decay. It was theater. He entered the main control building. It was dark, but his helmet switched to night vision. Wires ran along the walls, neatly placed. Too neat. He followed them to a room marked Operations. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, a large screen blinked to life automatically. A human face appeared. Older male, sharp eyes, dressed in a worn-out military coat. He looked directly at the camera. "If you're watching this," the man said, "then you made it past our little welcome party." Zarak tilted his head. The video continued. "We wanted you to find this place. We wanted you to think we were weak, broken. We let you win those first battles. You see, you're not the first observer sent here. And you won't be the last." The man smiled slightly, but his eyes stayed cold. "You think humans are disorganized, primitive. It's what we wanted you to believe." The screen flickered. More videos appeared, battle footage, but not public ones. Secret ones. Human squads pushing alien units back with strange weapons Zarak had never seen. Plasma bursts, cloaking shields, interference pulses that shut down Vorelian drones mid-flight. None of this was supposed to exist. Zarak stepped back. His mind raced. How? The screen changed again. Footage played of a small shuttle landing, the same one he arrived in. His shuttle. He watched himself step out, stumble, scan the area. The timestamp said it happened 27 minutes ago. But he had not seen any camera. He quickly removed his helmet, looked around. No lens, no drones, nothing. Then something caught his eye in the reflection of a metal locker. Red lights, behind the wall. Zarak pulled out his plasma blade and sliced through the thin wall. Behind it, hidden carefully, was a small room with 3 machines. One was a thermal tracker. Another was an advanced AI prediction system. The third was running a program. The program's title was Observation Pattern V9, Behavioral Prediction Model. Subject, Vorelian Scout. They were tracking him before he even arrived. Suddenly, a low beep echoed behind him. He turned sharply. A small drone hovered in the air. Human-built, stealth model. It had been watching the whole time. It projected a hologram. Sane human general again. "You're not here to learn about us. You're here to confirm what you've already assumed. that we're not a threat. The image leaned closer. But you're wrong. Zarak raised his weapon. The image smiled. You've already stepped into our trap. This entire facility, the crash site, even your shuttle's crash, it was all designed to lead you here. We control the area. We control the story you believe. The hologram vanished. Zarak looked around, suddenly aware of how quiet it had become. Too quiet. He stepped outside again. The forest now seemed different. Darker. Still. Then, a soft crunch in the leaves behind him. He turned fast. Nothing there. But he felt it. He was being watched. And he was not the hunter anymore. Zarak stood still, listening. The crackling of the forest, the distant hum of insects, everything felt off. His Vorilian instincts screamed that something was wrong, but the forest seemed as empty as before. The soft crunching noise had stopped, but the uneasy feeling didn't fade. It felt as though the very trees were watching him, waiting. The base was a trap. He knew that now. He moved quickly through the darkened paths, retracing his steps toward the crash site. His mind raced. The humans. What had they known? Why were they playing with him like this? His helmet's interface beeped, flashing a new signal. Unidentified life form detected. A weak red light blinked in the corner of his vision. The signal was faint, barely above the natural background noise of the forest. Zarak's first instinct was to dismiss it. A wild animal. Maybe. Some leftover wildlife from the human experiments. But then it came again. A faint pulse. This time, it was closer. He crouched low, silently slipping behind a fallen log, his plasma blade humming softly at his side. His heart beat faster, though he knew there was no reason to panic. The forest was silent again. Too silent. The red dot blinked on his radar. Closer. Zarak could feel the hairs on his neck standing up. He had faced hundreds of enemies, alien and human, yet this felt different, as if the forest itself were part of the threat. Then, a shadow moved. He didn't see it at first. It was a blur, a quick flash between the trees. But he didn't need to see it clearly. His senses screamed. Enemy. He wasn't alone anymore. Zarak jumped up, activating his cloaking field just as a sharp, fast movement shot through the shadows. His enhanced reflexes allowed him to dodge, but barely. Something had almost hit him, something quick and precise, like a dart. Human tricks, he muttered, his voice cold. But his respect for them was growing, despite himself. These humans weren't the helpless prey he believed them to be. The shadow moved again, faster this time. Another dart shot past, grazing his shoulder. It was a tranquilizer, a new weapon, unlike anything he had seen before, but it had no effect on him. Not yet. Zarak turned, searching for the source of the attack. But the shadows were thick. No sign of movement. Then, the truth hit him. He wasn't the target. Not yet. He slowly turned, realizing something had changed. The trap had shifted, and now he was being herded into the heart of something much larger. A game. The red light blinked faster. He took off at a sprint, moving with controlled speed, but the feeling of being watched, of being chased, never left. And just as he reached the outskirts of the base, a sudden blast of air sent him tumbling forward. Something had hit him, a wave of energy, not a physical weapon, but something much stronger. Zarak crashed to the ground, stunned for a moment, his vision spinning. He quickly regained control, shaking off the disorienting effects. His body was strong enough to withstand the blast, but he knew it wouldn't be long before the humans closed in. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw the figure of a human, a woman wearing a dark, tactical suit. She appeared from behind a nearby structure, a shadow among shadows. Her eyes locked onto him. Her face was hidden under a mask, but her posture was clear. She was hunting him. Zarak raised his plasma blade, but she was already gone, vanishing into the darkness, as silently as she had appeared. His systems didn't register her anymore. She was using some kind of cloaking technology, a far more advanced model than anything he had on him. "Impressive," he muttered, "but you can't hide from me forever." He pushed himself to his feet, ready to fight, but then he saw it, a message flashing on his interface. "Warning, target locked." He spun around. Too late. A thin wire snapped around his wrist, pulling him into a trap. The wire, made of a strange metallic substance, burned as it tightened. Zarak growled in frustration, struggling to break free, but the wire held strong. He didn't know what it was, but it was cutting off his power supply. He twisted and fought, but then the figure appeared again, this time standing right in front of him. The woman in tactical gear held a small device in her hand, pressing a button. The wire tightened again, and the glow in his armor dimmed. "You didn't think this would be easy, did you?" The woman said, her voice cold. "You're not the first alien to land here. You won't be the last." She tapped a few more buttons, and the wire released with a soft hiss. Zarak fell to his knees, stunned. His body ached from the energy drain, but he could still move. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice sharp with anger and confusion. The woman stepped back, lowering her mask for a second, revealing only a quick flash of her eyes. Cold, calculating, but somehow human. "We're not the weak ones here. You've made a grave mistake thinking that we were." She smiled slightly, then turned her back to him. Zarak's mind raced. He had underestimated them, and now the humans had turned the tables completely. The game had begun. Zarak staggered to his feet, the energy drain still pulling at his strength. His armor flickered, struggling to recharge, but it would be a while before he was fully operational again. The woman, whoever she was, had left him with little more than his pride and a lingering sense of dread. He glanced around the forest. The trap was deeper than he had imagined. The humans weren't just skilled. They were playing him like a pawn in a game he didn't understand. Zarak wiped the mud from his helmet and began to move again. He had to find out more. There was something bigger at play here. He crouched low, instinctively checking his surroundings, his mind racing through possible escape routes. He needed to get to higher ground, something to give him an edge, even without the full power of his suit. As he made his way toward the forest's edge, he spotted something that made his heart skip. A trail. It wasn't a typical human path. It was too precise. The trees had been cut at specific angles, the ground disturbed in a way that spoke of military discipline, not random wildlife. "Ghosts," Zarak muttered under his breath. The Ghost Unit, an elite human squad of special operatives, rumored to be invisible to scanners, untraceable, and capable of moving through enemy territory without making a sound. They were legendary, and they had been hunting him since he stepped onto this planet. He followed the trail, careful to stay out of sight, but every step felt like a countdown. The forest seemed to close in around him, the trees leaning forward like silent observers. Zarak wasn't just a scout anymore. He was prey. He reached a clearing and froze. Across the open space, a shadow moved, blending with the night. He didn't see it at first, just a ripple in the air, like heat rising from the ground. The figure was barely visible, but it was there. It was a human, a man wearing a dark uniform. His movements were unnaturally smooth, almost flowing, as if he was part of the landscape itself. Zarak's heart rate increased. The ghosts. They were real. He crouched low behind a fallen log, trying to stay out of sight, but the air felt thick with the presence of something just beyond his reach. His enhanced vision scanned the area, but there was nothing. The man had vanished. Invisible. Zarak's mind raced. The ghosts had been given technology far beyond what any alien species had seen. Their cloaking devices weren't just technology. They were fused with the soldiers, part of their bodies, making them one with the environment. He heard the faintest noise, a whispering footstep, a shift in the air. Another figure, just to his left. This time, Zarak felt the presence before he saw it. A chill ran down his spine. The ghosts were everywhere, silently closing in. Suddenly, his visor lit up. Energy signature detected. Zarak's pulse quickened. They were surrounding him. He couldn't tell how many. There were too many heat signatures, too many shadows in his field of vision. He needed to make a choice. Fight or run. Without warning, the air exploded with a soft thump. A tranquilizer dart struck him in the shoulder, sending a jolt of numbing cold through his body. His vision blurred. He pulled the dart out in rage, but the moment he did, a sharp voice cut through the darkness. "Drop your weapon." Zarak spun around, his blade raised, but before he could react, the figure appeared before him, another human, moving so quickly that Zarak barely registered the movement. The man wore a black suit, his face hidden under a dark hood, but Zarak could see the glint of a firearm in his hand. "Did you think we would let you walk away?" the man asked, his voice almost mocking. Zarak gritted his teeth. "I am no prey." The man didn't flinch. "You're in our territory now. There are no predators here, only us." Zarak's eyes narrowed. "Who are you?" The figure's mouth twitched upward. "You'll find out soon enough." Suddenly, the air shifted again. More figures materialized from the shadows. The ghost unit had surrounded him completely, silent, deadly, invisible. Zarak's mind raced. He wasn't going to be captured. Not like this. He had fought in battles across the galaxy, faced far worse odds. But these humans were different. They weren't just soldiers. They were hunters. And they had learned how to turn the hunt into a game. The man in front of him spoke again. "We don't need to kill you, Commander. We need you to understand. This is our world. You've only just stepped into it." Zarak stood tall, his body aching from the tranquilizer's effects, but his will was unbroken. The ghosts hadn't killed him yet. They didn't want to. Not yet. "You think you can control me," Zarak said slowly, his voice cold. "But you can't. You don't know who you're dealing with." The ghosts didn't respond. They just waited, watching. Zarak's mind worked quickly. He had no choice but to play their game. "For now. Take me to your leader," he said, his voice a low growl. The man's expression didn't change. "You'll meet them soon enough. But first, we'll see if you can survive the game." Zarak's limbs were still heavy from the tranquilizer, and the relentless pressure of the ghost unit's presence didn't ease as they led him through the dense forest. The figures around him moved in silence, their cloaking devices making them appear and disappear like shadows in the wind. He was surrounded by the elite of humanity's military, and every instinct he had screamed that he was not in control of the situation anymore. The man who had spoken earlier, now leading the group, walked silently ahead. He was tall, his movements precise, almost mechanical. Zarak's enhanced vision tracked him closely, but there was nothing to glean from his movements, no slip-up or flaw. He was a perfect soldier. They reached a hidden structure after an hour of tense travel, deep in the heart of the forest. The building was small but fortified, barely noticeable, tucked away beneath thick layers of foliage and natural barriers. It looked like an old research outpost, though human-built tech seemed to pulse quietly under the surface, radiating an ominous energy. Zarak was shoved inside, his arms bound but his dignity intact. The ghost unit members watched him closely, silent and calculating. The room they entered was dimly lit, filled with the faint buzz of machines, and cold concrete walls that echoed every step they took. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, studying him, evaluating him. "Take a seat," the lead ghost ordered, his voice low but firm. Zarak glanced around. There was nowhere to escape. The walls were reinforced with alloys he couldn't penetrate, and the windows were too small for even his lithe frame to fit through. The humans had thought of everything. They were prepared. He sat, but his posture was proud, defiant. The ghost leader removed his hood. His face was scared. The lines of battle itched into his features, but it was his eyes that struck Zarak. They were cold, devoid of emotion, as if nothing could surprise him anymore. "You're the first Forelian to land on this planet since the invasion began," the ghost leader said, studying Zarak with a measured gaze. "The first scout to try and undermine us." Zarak's lip curled into a sneer. "I'm not your enemy. You've made a mistake. You think you can control the galaxy with weak, primitive tactics, but you can't." The leader interrupted, his voice firm. "You think you know us. You think we're weak. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Zarak stared at him, unfazed. He had seen enemies fall, empires crumble, and races defeated. Humans were just another species to subjugate, but the words had struck a chord. "We've been playing you from the start," the leader continued, stepping closer. "You think we're just a collection of scattered primitive tribes. But you're wrong. Humanity doesn't die easy, Zarak. We never have. And we never will." Zarak's expression darkened. There was something in his voice that made the commander hesitate for a moment, something that felt different. But he wasn't going to let them see fear. "Humans don't die easy," the ghost leader repeated, his eyes narrowing. "But you're about to learn that." Before Zarak could respond, a sudden wave of sharp, hot pain erupted in his chest. His vision blurred, and he gasped as something cold slid into his bloodstream. An invasive substance. It was unlike anything he had encountered before. His body's systems screamed in resistance, but the poison was fast, invasive, and potent. "W. What is this?" Zarak managed, his voice strained, the pain making it difficult to speak. The ghost leader didn't flinch. "It's the last thing you'll ever feel." Zarak's heart raced as the toxin spread through his veins. His mind fought to hold on to clarity, but the force of the venom made it impossible to focus. The pain was unbearable. It was as if his entire body was shutting down, one organ at a time. The room began to spin. He fought for control, his pulse thundering in his ears, but his strength was fading fast. The leader stepped back, watching him struggle with cold detachment. "You're not the first alien we've captured, Zarak. You won't be the last. Every one of you believes you're invincible. That's your fatal flaw. You underestimate us." The leader's hand hovered near a console, pressing a few buttons. Zarak's helmet buzzed as it started to malfunction, his internal systems failing. As the edges of his vision began to darken, Zarak's voice came out weak and hoarse. "This won't end like this." The leader's lips curled into a smirk. "You're right. It won't. You'll wake up eventually, but not before we've learned everything we need." Zarak could feel his consciousness slipping away, the venom overwhelming him. But before the darkness took him completely, he caught a final glimpse of the leader's face, an expression that conveyed something he didn't expect: pity. Hours later, Zarak's eyes fluttered open. He was lying on a cold table, his arms free, but his energy still drained. His body ached as though he had been through a war. The venom was gone, but the after-effects remained. He was weak, vulnerable. He took shallow breaths, trying to regain control, but his mind felt off. He was no longer in the same room. He was in a new place, a sterile, clinical environment. But something was different. The humans had not only poisoned his body, they had also hacked into his systems. A voice suddenly interrupted his thoughts, low and menacing. "You survived, but you've learned nothing, Commander." Zarak slowly turned his head to see the ghost leader standing in the doorway, flanked by two more members of the unit. They were watching him like prey. "You might have survived the poison," the leader continued, "but we've learned about you too. We know your species better than you think. We know your weaknesses." Zarak pushed himself up, fury flashing in his eyes. He was no longer in pain, but the humiliation stung. He had underestimated them. This human force, they were far more dangerous than anything he had faced before. "You don't understand what you've done," Zarak growled, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You may have won today, but you'll regret this. You'll regret ever underestimating us." Zarak's mind was a blur as he stood on unsteady legs, the remnants of the poison still lingering in his veins, making his movements slow and calculated. He clenched his fists, fighting off the exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm him. His armor had been tampered with, and his systems were still malfunctioning. His body felt heavy, but his pride, the one thing the humans hadn't broken, was still intact. The Ghost Leader's smug smile persisted as he observed Zarak from the doorway. "How does it feel to be vulnerable, Commander?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "To be on the other side of the hunt." Zarak's sharp gaze never wavered from the leader. "You think this is over?" His voice was hoarse, but there was still a fire in it. "You're underestimating us again." The leader's eyes narrowed slightly. "We never underestimate you, Zarak. We simply outthink you, outlast you." He took a step forward, his voice lowering to a more dangerous tone. "You were a part of a grand invasion plan, your plan. And now, you're our prisoner." Zarak's chest tightened. He wanted to lash out, to tear through the ghost unit and escape with what little strength he had left. But this wasn't just about survival. The humans had played a much deeper game than he'd imagined. He needed to outsmart them. He took a deep breath, focusing on the one thing he could still control: his mind. "We'll see about that," he muttered under his breath. The leader nodded, stepping back, signaling to the others. "We'll give you a few moments to regain yourself, Commander. But don't get too comfortable. The real test begins soon." As the leader turned and walked out of the room, Zarak's mind began to race. The humans were smart, too smart. They were playing him in ways he hadn't even considered. He had been trained to fight, to conquer, to destroy. But this was different. Zarak looked around the sterile room. It was small, with metal walls and minimal furnishings. Just a table, a chair, and a console that seemed to be monitoring his vitals. They were keeping tabs on him, watching his every move. But there was one thing they hadn't accounted for. His eyes flicked to the table, specifically to the small corner where a power cable was dangling from the wall. A slight glimmer of hope sparked in his chest. "If I can get to that," he thought, "I can access the backup systems." His steps were cautious, his movements deliberate, trying not to alert the ghost unit if they were watching. The poison still coursed through his body, slowing him down, but it was no longer crippling. He had to act quickly. He approached the table, his hands shaking only slightly, and reached for the exposed wire. His fingers brushed against it, sending a spark of energy through his system. He quickly retracted his hand, taking a deep breath. "Stay calm," he reminded himself. "You've done this before." With careful precision, he tore at the insulation, exposing the inner circuitry. This would give him access to the facility's systems, their surveillance, their weapons, and most importantly, the ability to communicate. Zarak's mind raced as his fingers worked quickly to reroute the energy, his thoughts calculating every move. He was in. For the first time in hours, Zarak felt something close to hope. He tapped into the facility's security system and accessed their internal comms, finding a channel they hadn't locked down yet. His voice was calm, despite the beating of his heart in his ears. "You should have killed me when you had the chance." The screen flickered to life, and the ghost leader's face appeared. His eyes widened slightly, but his expression quickly hardened. "What are you doing, Commander?" he growled, his voice cold. Zarak stood tall, though his body was still weak. He knew this was his only chance to regain control. "I'm playing your game now," he said, a sharp smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "And I've just found your weakness." Before the leader could respond, Zarak initiated a system-wide lockdown. The doors to the facility slammed shut, locking everyone inside. The lights flickered and dimmed, and the power surged as the security system went into full lockdown mode. Zarak didn't wait. He moved quickly, his body still aching, but the adrenaline pumping through his veins kept him moving faster than he thought possible. He knew he didn't have much time. The ghosts would be hunting him now, but he had the advantage. He darted down narrow corridors, his movements swift and calculated. As he passed a few rooms, he spotted a few guards, 2 of them, standing by a console. Zarak didn't hesitate. He rushed them, his plasma blade flashing to life in his hand. The guards barely had time to react before Zarak disabled them both, his blade cutting through the air in precise, swift motions. He couldn't afford to linger. Every moment here was a risk. He turned a corner, hearing footsteps, running, fast, ghost-like figures materializing in his peripheral vision. The ghost unit had already launched their pursuit. The leader's voice came over the comms again. "You think you can escape? You've made a mistake. The only way out is through us." Zarak's eyes narrowed. The game had changed. He wasn't just trying to survive anymore. He was going to make them regret ever thinking they had him trapped. The challenge was clear now. He had to break through the heart of their stronghold, their command center. If he could disable their communications, disable their technology, they would be blind, and he would have the upper hand. It was risky, but Zarak had never been one to shy away from a challenge. With a swift glance over his shoulder, Zarak sprinted forward, ready for the fight of his life. The leader's smile didn't fade. "I don't think so, Commander, because the game's only just begun." Zarak's heart hammered in his chest as he raced through the darkened corridors, the faint hum of the facility's alarms echoing in his ears. His movements were faster now, fueled by desperation and the knowledge that this was his last chance. He could hear the footsteps of the ghost unit closing in on him, their advanced cloaking technology making them nearly invisible. But Zarak's instincts were sharp, honed from years of battle. He didn't need to see them to know they were there. He could feel them. The air was thick with tension, each step a reminder that time was running out. The walls around him, once cold and clinical, now seemed to pulse with the weight of impending doom. He could hear the faint beeping of security doors locking, the low whir of surveillance cameras tracking his every movement. The facility was closing in on him, but Zarak wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The poison had been purged from his system, and his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. He had to reach the command center. It was the heart of the entire operation, the place where all the ghost units' power and control originated. If he could disable their communications, sever their command link, then they would be blind, disoriented, and vulnerable. He rounded another corner and skidded to a halt. The room ahead, he could see it now, through the faint glow of emergency lights, was the one he needed. The command center. But as he approached, the door slid open with a hiss, and 2 figures emerged from the shadows. Zarak barely had time to react. His blade was already in his hand, but the ghosts were faster, their movements synchronized, their weapons drawn in an instant. He barely dodged the first shot, the laser bolt singing past his ear. The second came faster, but this time, Zarak was ready. He spun, deflecting the blast with a calculated swipe of his blade, his enhanced reflexes kicking in. The first ghost lunged forward, attempting to disable him with a powerful punch. Zarak twisted just out of reach, using the momentum to drive the edge of his blade into the soldier's side. The ghost staggered back, a pained grunt escaping his lips, but the second one was already moving in to take his place. Zarak's heart pounded, his breath steady but quick. The ghosts were formidable, efficient, precise, but they weren't invincible. Not like he had once believed. He parried another strike, using the force to knock the soldier off balance, and with a swift maneuver, Zarak incapacitated him with a strike to the neck. The last one stood frozen for a heartbeat, surprised by the sudden reversal of power. Zarak didn't hesitate. With one fluid motion, he swept his blade through the air, catching the final ghost off guard. The soldier crumpled to the floor without another sound. He was alone again, but the victory felt hollow. These were only the first obstacles. The real challenge lay beyond the doors to the command center. He needed to move quickly. He darted through the entrance, his eyes scanning the room for the control consoles. The command center was a hive of activity, screens and terminals flickering with data streams, flashing red lights indicating various security measures. Zarek's mind clicked into action. Every part of him focused on the task ahead. He moved to the central console, his fingers flying over the keys as he hacked into the system. His mind raced through the protocols. This was the heart of the Ghost Unit's operation, and they had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated the Vorelians. As he worked, his fingers felt the heat of the pursuit still lingering close behind. The Ghost Leader's voice crackled over the comms, clear and menacing. "You've made it this far, Commander, but you won't get far enough. The station is fully locked down. You've just activated our failsafes." Zarak didn't flinch. His focus was unwavering. The leader was trying to bait him, to make him second-guess himself. But Zarak had no time for distractions. His mind was calculating, processing, every keystroke bringing him closer to his goal. He found what he needed, a hidden backdoor into the facility systems, a failsafe of his own. This was his chance. With a deep breath, Zarak hit the final key. The room around him flickered as the security system began to collapse, shutting down, one terminal at a time. The ghosts would no longer have eyes on him. He leaned back in the chair, watching the chaos unfold as the facility's lockdown protocol failed. The alarms blared, a constant, deafening wail of failure. The humans were losing control. A loud crash echoed from behind him. The Ghost Leader had arrived. "You think this is a victory?" The leader's voice was cold, cutting through the noise. "You've triggered a countdown. You've locked yourself in here with us, and now you'll never leave." Zarak didn't turn around. He kept his hands steady on the console, monitoring the systems that were now shutting down one by one. "You've forgotten one thing," Zarak said, his voice low but full of venom. "I've never needed your mercy. And now, I control the clock." The leader's footsteps were heavy, growing closer. Zarak's pulse quickened, but he stayed focused. He had made his move. The countdown was initiated. The facility's systems were in chaos. The ghosts were disoriented. And now it was time to finish this. "You'll pay for this," the leader growled from behind him. Zarak's fingers paused on the last key, and a wicked smile spread across his face. The ghosts had never realized the one thing Zarak knew: never underestimate the underdog. With a swift movement, he hit the final command. The power surged through the facility. And then, silence. The facility was completely disabled. The Ghost Unit was now just a group of humans, stranded and powerless. Zarak rose from the console, his legs still shaky, but his resolve unbreakable. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, he was on the winning side. Zarak could feel the silence reverberating around him, the sudden stillness almost deafening after the chaos that had consumed the facility. His breath was steady now, the adrenaline still surging through his veins, but he knew the true battle had only just begun. The Ghost Unit's power had been stripped away, but that didn't mean they were out of the fight yet. The leader was still out there, and Zarak could feel him closing in. The humans were resourceful, ruthless. If they were anything, they were relentless. As Zarak stepped away from the central console, his mind raced. The countdown had been activated. The Ghost Unit would have moments, maybe minutes, before the facility was rendered entirely useless. But they weren't going to give up that easily. Suddenly, the facility's emergency lights flickered, and a voice echoed through the now quiet hallways. "Zarak." The voice was cold, calm, and unmistakable. It was the Ghost Leader. "You've won the battle, but you've sealed your fate. The countdown is irreversible. You've trapped us here together, but you've also trapped yourself. There is nowhere left to run. Zarak clenched his fists, his body tense. The leader was right. The facility was about to collapse, but they were still trapped in the heart of it. The doorways were locked, the exit routes sealed. The countdown had begun, and the walls would soon close in. But Zarak wasn't afraid. The ghost leader had underestimated him before, and now he was making the same mistake again. "You think I'm trapped?" Zarak called back, his voice steady, full of resolve. "I've never needed a way out. I've always found my way." A sudden surge of energy coursed through Zarak's body as the doors to the command center slammed shut with a deafening thud. The walls shook, a deep, resonating hum vibrating through the facility. It was the sound of their last seconds ticking away. But Zarak was already moving. He dashed towards the back of the room, his mind working quickly. There were still emergency exits hidden beneath the command center, routes only the highest-ranking personnel knew about. The ghost leader hadn't accounted for that. He was too focused on Zarak's immediate actions. Zarak pressed his hand to the hidden panel beneath the console. The wall hissed as it slid open, revealing a narrow tunnel leading down into the darkness. He stepped into the tunnel without hesitation, his senses on high alert. The air was cold, and the further he moved, the deeper he felt the weight of his decision. He wasn't escaping. He was buying time. Time for the mission. Time to finish what he had started. The tunnel was long, the walls slick with condensation, and the sound of his footsteps echoed off the metal floor. But his thoughts never wavered. The ghost leader and his forces were still coming for him. But Zarak knew this underground route would buy him enough time to set his final trap. Moments later, the tunnel opened up to a large hidden chamber deep within the facility. The room was an old storage bay, abandoned and dark, its metallic walls covered in layers of dust. This was where Zarak had planned his final move. The countdown was ticking, but the real war would be fought here. The sound of footsteps behind him echoed. Zarak turned sharply, his body tensed, ready for whatever came next. From the shadows emerged the ghost leader, followed by a group of his best soldiers. Their expressions were grim, their eyes narrowed with fury. "You can't escape this, Zarak," the leader's voice echoed in the cold room. "This place is going down, and you're going with it." Zarak stood tall, his eyes meeting the leader's. "I'm not escaping, leader. You are." The ghost leader smirked, his hand resting on the weapon at his side. "You think this is over? You've isolated yourself. You're out of options." Zarak's lips curled into a knowing smile. "You've always been the one who underestimated me." With a sudden motion, Zarak activated the hidden explosives he had planted earlier, right under their feet. The room erupted with a deafening bang, the walls trembling as the explosive charges went off, sending shockwaves through the entire facility. The ghost leader and his soldiers staggered back, their weapons raised, but the blast had already begun. The walls cracked and groaned under the pressure, alarms blaring louder than ever. Zarak's eyes narrowed as he prepared for the final confrontation. "This is it," Zarak said, his voice calm but full of conviction. "The end of your reign." The ghost leader's eyes burned with hatred. "You'll never win, Zarak. You're just one alien against the might of humanity." Zarak took a step forward, his voice unwavering. "I don't fight for myself. I fight for something far greater than your empire." With that, Zarak lunged at the leader, his blade flashing in the dim light. The fight was fierce, a blur of speed and precision, both combatants moving like lightning. The ghost leader was fast, too fast, but Zarak's training was unmatched. His reflexes were honed from years of battle, and the fire of his mission fueled every strike. In the heat of the battle, Zarak made his move. He disarmed the ghost leader with a quick twist of his wrist, knocking the leader's weapon from his hand. Before the leader could react, Zarak's blade was at his throat. The room fell silent. The countdown had reached its final seconds, and the facility's collapse was imminent. Zarak's voice was low, cold. "This is for every life you've taken, For every race you've tried to subjugate, for every planet you've burned, this is the end of your empire. The leader's defiance flickered for a moment, but he knew it was over. His reign, his plans, everything, had been undone by the very thing he thought he could control. With a swift motion, Zarak ended it. The ghost leader fell to the floor, his reign extinguished. Zarak stood over him, panting, his chest heaving. The countdown was over. The facility's walls shook violently as the explosive charges detonated in the heart of the base. It was done. The ghost unit's power had been shattered, and the mission had been completed. But Zarak knew the war was far from over. Humanity had learned a hard lesson today, but it wasn't the last battle. It was just the beginning.